Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Shadab here.
Hey, Shadab. Good to see you again. Good to connect with you, and happy to get going with today's topics.
Yeah, and just a quick reminder for anybody who's joining new, this is the AI Files channel. This is Shadab here. I'm the Data and AI Director at Microsoft. And here's my colleague, Jamie.
Yeah, again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. We have a lot of different news today. Again, there's the AI news never ends, no matter what day it is. So we got a little smorgasbord of information for everybody today. Actually, I want to start out with some things for earnings. Believe it or not, not we're going to go through earnings and details, but Apple went through their earnings last week. Obviously, depending upon when you listen to this podcast, but early in May. What was interesting out of that, when you kind of dissect all of the numbers that were out there, and where Apple is leaning towards different programs and projects with the iPhones and iPads and what they're doing on hardware, you start to kind of see what they're doing for their AI strategy. Tim Cook actually confirmed that Apple is going to continue with a hybrid approach. What exactly does that mean? Well, it means both in-house development for not only hardware, but then some of those models, but also relying on third-party sources. The key thing that I at least I saw within their earnings is they're not really going to put a large, or what they call significant, investment into new data centers, which kind of then leans you towards, um, you know, are they going to be doing more in-house or less? It kind of leads it to less in-house development, and probably relying on those third-party sources or resources even more. I know in the news a couple months ago, they had some partnerships, or were announcing some things that they may be doing with OpenAI and maybe even Google. So we'll see where that goes. The other thing that was kind of discerning from those earnings is, what does it mean for their devices? I mean, when you look back at the iPhone today and what Siri can do, there's obviously opportunities that can be incorporated around Gen AI and inside of the iPhone, but it doesn't stop there. I think what was also alluded to is there's going to be AI across the various different devices, whether that means their MacBooks or the Apple Watch, including obviously what I just mentioned in terms of the iPhone. The other thing, and it kind of goes back to, I think Tim Cook had actually kind of, I don't want to say misled, but maybe misspoke, that there may be some major announcements coming up. They do have um, a release coming up for iPads, soon. I think it's either this week or next week. And there was some thought that there may be some major AI announcements with that release of the iPad hardware, but that doesn't look to be true. They came out with a quick correction, saying that there was going to be no new announcements with the new iPad launch. But what may be an interesting thing to kind of look at from Apple is their Worldwide Developer Conference, which I believe is in June. That might be where you could see some major announcements from Apple. And again, what does that mean? No crystal ball, but I think it could be, explaining what those partnerships may be, what they're planning to include into, the hardware, let's say with inside of Siri, inside of the iPhone. So time will tell, but I think that telling will probably be sooner than what we think, and probably will be at the Worldwide Developer Conference. So that's story number one. I don't know, Shadab, if you're an iPhone user. I am. I'm certainly interested to see what they are planning to, or plan on bringing to the iPhone and some of their other devices in the near term. But are you an iPhone user? I don't even know.
I am. I am actually. I'm the iPhone user. In fact, I've had a privilege of working with the iPhone devices for a long time, because Long time ago, I was actually a consultant with Apple, so I've seen them quite from inside, and amazing products and devices. One thing that also actually excites me is that iPhone itself is kind of becoming your, who knows, maybe the future data center, because it is increasing in its capacity, and then who knows, a lot of those AI models can actually run on it. And in fact, it is true. You might have heard about the Phi-3 from Microsoft. That was an amazing new announcement actually in the last couple of weeks. Phi-3 Mini, which was launched. It is, and it is actually a small language model. So small language models are essentially just like large language model, but they have much lesser number of parameters, and they have been actually trained and created differently. Conceptually, they remain same, but they have been like just worked out a little differently. So Phi-3 Mini is, believe it or not, just 3.8 billion parameters. However, this tiny but mighty model, if you see, they were launched, and i5 mini, actually, if you go to the this blog, you will see the performance of it, and this is the 5.3 mini performance, and it is actually at par or even better than some of its comparable model. In fact, it is actually better in performance compared to some of the models which are twice its size, like Gemma or Llama 8 billion, because 5.3 mini is only 3.8 billion parameters. The other important thing is it actually comes in two context windows, 4K and 128K. 128K is same as what you have today in the GPT-4. So no degradation of quality. The context window is much higher, much better. The key thing about small language model is that it is actually trained using very high quality data. So using a very curated web data or synthetic data created by the other LLM. So this is a great example of how the data quality can make such a huge difference. Other
Yeah,
important thing.
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that's a great point you just made, Shadab. I mean, because you've got these, super large like GPT-4, Claude Opus, and these very large language models. It takes a lot of resources to be able to train those, and then you look at, something like Phi-3 and some of the other open source models that are out there that are these small language models, and they have their fit or their niche in terms of what organizations want to do. And it comes from two different facets. One is, like you said, they're based upon a higher quality of data because you don't need as much data. So you could focus on what you need. So it's this whole notion of being able to either create or fine tune based upon custom data sets, which make these very, I'm going to call it specific instruction based models that can be used and tailored to align with, a whole bunch of different practical use cases or applications, which really makes, the small language model more attractive in some cases than these large ones. By the way, I kind of chuckle a little bit when we say small language models. Maybe 5 years ago, the small language models that we're talking about now were big. So
That
everything's
is
all
true.
relative, but it's about how these things are actually being used.
That is
Um,
true. And what I find also fascinating is that this is actually one of the first model. This is actually right now the only model 5.3 mini which can actually run on your iPhone. So talking about iPhone, as I say, right, the iPhone itself can become actually the platform to run, who knows. But the 5.3 mini is the only one which actually feasibly can run, practically can run on an iPhone. So there you go, right? So this is a fundamental change in like SLMs coming to you. So that is why it is very suitable for edge computing or the resource constrained environment, or where the cost becomes prohibitive. The 5.3 mini would be actually way to go. There are other two actually models as well, 5.3 small, which is 7 billion, and 5.3 medium, which is 14 billion. That will also be on the way very soon. But you can see here in the chart, 5.3 small, 5.3 medium is actually again mind-blowing performance. Compare that with Llama, for example, 8 billion, or even it even matches the performance of GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is much larger model, right? GPT 4 is like is still a wish list for all the models. We're not talking about that, but GPT 3.5 Turbo. So SLMs, do not ignore them. Don't think that there is a word small in it, so they are just actually short. No, is just small, but they're highly curated and they can actually work as well as much larger language model. I'm very excited about the Phi-3 families. I think a lot of corporates and customers are also actually looking to try this out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like you said, I see so many different potential use cases based upon that narrower field of data that's being used to train and or to fine tune those models. Hey, one quick, I guess, notable that's very interesting to me. We Microsoft is putting out like the Phi-3 model, focusing on these small language models. But what just kind of hit, I'm going to call it the airwaves, or hit recently, is Microsoft is also building its own large language model. So some of you may have already heard or seen or read, perhaps, but there's something called MAI1. Assuming that stands for Microsoft AI1 model, but that's a 500 million parameter model. Put that in perspective. What we just said, Phi-3 is, what was it, 3 million, somewhere around
3.8
there.
billion.
Yep. So you got 3 million over here, and then 500 million on this side. That's, by the way, that pales in comparison to GPT-4. I mean, there's no exact number with GPT-4, but estimates are around 1.8 billion parameters. So this is certainly smaller, but
So you meant trillions and billions.
yeah,
Jim.
trillion. Sorry, yes, it's a lot. Let's put it that way. So the MAI1 is certainly not as big as what the number of parameters that are in GPT-4, but it's certainly a lot larger. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes over time.
Yeah.
Speaking of OpenAI, as we just mentioned about GPT-4, they've made some news. And it's not GPT-5, which is always being rumored and speculated. I do have maybe something else that I will mention about that as well. But the big things that I saw this week, or this past week and a half, are some of the deals that OpenAI has inked with content producers, specifically with Financial Times and Stack Overflow. So OpenAI, created a partnership with Financial Times, otherwise known as FT, to get their content. And this is more than just a simple exchange of content for payment. There's also, a collaboration in the way that the data that comes in from Financial Times is going to be linked from various different output from ChatGPT. So, this opens up the whole dialogue around what is private, intellectual property from companies. What's copyrighted material. So these deals, and OpenAI is not just the only company that's looking at these types of deals, but it allows for ingestion of this content without any risk of copyright infringement, which is huge. And I believe some people probably already know that there's ongoing litigation with OpenAI and other publications around the use of their data. So these types of deals allows for that ingestion of data. The only thing that's coming up, I would say, against this is, how does this actually, lend itself to what could be considered fair compensation for other media companies? Because if one company is being able to send in their data, well, what does that mean for the next company? I think time will tell with that. I think a lot of it may also be contingent upon what we see from those other lawsuits I kind of alluded to before. But that's kind of one thing to think about and stay abreast of. By the way, the Financial Times deal was not the only deal. OpenAI also struck a deal with Stack Overflow. Again, this partnership is to enhance the models that OpenAI has. So again, this brings in all the various different, posts and information that people have on Stack Overflow. The other thing too is that this is reciprocal. So being able to bring in some of the generative AI features into Stack Overflow with basically, that integration piece to bring to the platform. I believe this was supposed to be introduced probably by the end of June or July, but kind of look for those if you are a Stack Overflow user. Now, nothing comes without any, backlash, if you will. So there definitely are some community concerns, and I've even read some things already online. So if you are a an avid poster onto Stack Overflow, what does that mean to the way that your data, your knowledge that you put into Stack Overflow? Stack Overflow has been around for many years. So the whole intent to Stack Overflow was this human to human interaction to be able to, share your thoughts and insights. Well, if I'm a poster on the Stack Overflow and now that's just getting sucked into, an OpenAI model, where is my compensation? So again, the question becomes, who owns the rights of that data?
That's in the
And
fine print, Jamie,
yeah,
that people
exactly.
signed on and never read, actually.
So here's an interesting one, and again, like I said, I've seen some of this being posted, but some of the top posters that have top ranked answers, they're going into Stack Overflow to um, you can't erase a post, at least something that has a lot of users and is a high rated post. But what these posters have been doing is changing the content that's within it and basically saying, I object to this. Now, here's the interesting part. Stack Overflow is basically going back in and reverting back to that high rated post. So in essence, a poster is now having their work changed to basically say, no, you can't do that. And I think it goes back to what you just said. So, read the fine print and understand that we're in an age that anything that you put out there more than likely will be used at some point, from a web scraper or these large language models that are going to read your data. And this goes back to where I said before, like the deals that OpenAI is making with Stack Overflow or Financial Times and some of the other ones that they've already made. They're making these relationships such that at least between these companies, they're able to use that data. So
It's going to be a fascinating area. The data ownership and how the people getting compensated, etc. It will be evolving. I'm glad to see that there are some settlements starting to happen, and these are just the beginning. So I'm sure that new framework will emerge in the future, where everybody may feel participating, not probably justifiably compensated, but at least everybody has some share and equity in the thing. So let's see how that emerges.
yeah, definitely. One last news story, I guess, for today will be around Amazon. So two notables here. First one is around Code Whisperer. So I don't know if anyone has actually used Code Whisperer before, but this has been rebranded into Q Developer, kind of tying back in to the whole Q family, which is business-oriented generative AI that's tied into the Amazon set of tool sets. So other than just a rebranded, it actually extends the functionality to include debugging, application upgrades, doing security scans, as well as some SQL code generation. So again, I'll call myself a quasi developer. I jump in to try some things out. So I've been using Copilot from aligned with GitHub. Copilot tools integrated with the Visual Studio Code. So Copilot certainly is, the de facto leader in this space. And this is, at least my interpretation of what Amazon is doing is, trying to make, what was Code Whisperer, not only in that rebranding, but catching up to some of the capabilities that, are enhanced. They did also include some additional new features, which basically is introducing agents, which enables it to autonomously perform some tasks in terms of implementation or documentation. So those are great introductions. Again, these are things that pretty much aligns with where Copilot is today, or at least in the short term, what may be coming out with some of Copilot's enhancements as well. So I would say if you're, an avid AWS or Amazon developer, you might be, more apt to use, this Q developer tool set versus, if you're using other tool sets. So again, that's one interesting thing. The other bigger piece that I would say is the announcement of Bedrock Studio. I'll show a quick little example, a walkthrough of the demo. We'll have some links in the show links on this, so you can take a look at Bedrock Studio yourself. But just to put some context onto this, Bedrock's been around for quite some time. You're able to look at the catalog of foundational models. It's their Amazon's environment for doing generative AI. So what Bedrock Studio is all about is it's really a tool for organizations to experiment with and develop AI powered apps. And I guess the question would be, what's considered an AI powered app? Well, an app, at least to me, I mean, obviously you can start to build things that have, UIs and APIs that are associated with it, but an AI powered app would be the core fundamental things. Like, you obviously need a model. What's going to be the foundational model that you can use? Is it going to be something like a Claude 3 model? Is it going to be, a Llama, Meta Llama model, or something else like Mistral? So that's the foundational model. But then you want to inject some things into the use of that model. Obviously, give it persona, provide some knowledge, quote unquote, data that it could use. And again, think of it as that's the RAG pattern. You want to apply some safety or guardrails into that app. And if you so choose, if you want to extend the app to be able to talk to other applications, that's where quote unquote assistants or functions come into play. Well, that's exactly what Bedrock Studio is all about. So it allows a AWS user, and I'm going to explain that a little bit because it's a little bit disconnected from just let's say the AWS console, which is a good thing, and I'll explain that in a minute. But as a user, you're able to come in and do this rapid prototyping, do fine tuning of a model, be able to collaborate with other users, and as I mentioned, integrate with the other models that are out there, whether it's Anthropic, Mistral, Meta, or some of the other partners. So what's interesting is that when you create a Bedrock Studio application, what happens behind the scenes is that AWS is deploying the resources that are required automatically. So basically that means, if you need storage, it's going to deploy the S3 bucket that is required to house, let's say, your quote unquote data or that knowledge that's going to be used. It's going to deploy anything else that's required within that app. So, if I had to draw some comparisons, and again, I work a lot with Microsoft tools. The comparison is certainly there with the Azure AI Studio. As I mentioned, all the things that Bedrock Studio does are there within AI Studio. The one thing that I see with Bedrock Studio that may be missing, and again, this might be something that comes in later on, is the ability to build a repeatable pattern that's similar inside of Azure AI Studio for prompt flow and being able to do the evaluation there. So, maybe we'll take a deeper look into that over time, but that's one area that I see as far as differences. So let me just kind of let me share a screen, and we'll share this out later on as far as links. But this is I'm going to talk through this. This is the actual. This is a quick little demo, if you will, of the environment. So you come in and you create a project inside of Bedrock. So again, this project is what's going to house or bring in everything. So in this case, it's creating what's called a fantasy writer. So you give it a knowledge base. This is what I was talking before about, like that RAG pattern. So it's bringing up text, and this goes into that S3 bucket that happens automatically. So now you have this knowledge. Now you want to apply some guardrails. This is the safety, if you will, against that system. So you could define, all right, well, in this case, I don't want any vampires being mentioned. What do I want to deny a topic? Vampires. What's the definition of that? What specific words or phrases do I not want on it? So that's the guardrail. And then I could set up specific things as far as those functions. And again, here's a fantasy API. There's nothing here that helps you write that, but you're just going to drop in your JSON of the schema that would actually be called. And, in this case, you could identify whether or not you want authentication, or there's going to be some keys. Now, once you do that, you now have the ability to create this application. This application is going to be, what is this? Well, here's the system prompt. Here's the personas, the knowledge base from what I created before. You're going to attach that to the application. Basically, you're creating that RAG connection. What I like about this is that you can create starter prompts. So, if you're creating applications, some people may not be familiar with, creating a prompt or prompt engineering. So this is sort of like the simple starter, like, help me write a story about dragons. So it went off and created that. So, again, here's that concept of creating that application, but I can share this environment now with other users, and they do not need to be connected, or have console rights inside of AWS. So this is, a disconnected tool set to be able to connect into this application that you're building. So again, that's, in 2 minutes or less, a quick view of what, AWS Bedrock Studio or Amazon Bedrock Studio looks like and some of its feature functionality. Definitely recommend, for those that are interested, dive into it. We'll, other than this video, we'll include some links on how to actually get started with Bedrock Studio, and you could try it out for yourself.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to more and more announcements actually in the month of May. It's a pretty busy month. Microsoft Build is coming up. I would definitely recommend everybody to actually register and join that. We are expecting a lot of announcements coming from Microsoft this month later. So looking forward to that event and more announcements.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, it's never a dull moment talking about artificial intelligence, and there's certainly will be more.
Yep, absolutely. Great. Anything else, Jamie, that we need to cover this week?
No, I think that's it. Keep it close to a half hour, get people in and out, and we'll see everybody shortly in the next episode.
Perfect. See you soon. Don't miss out the new episode that will be coming out. Hopefully, we'll have something very, very exciting. We will start actually getting some guests as well now, and we will do some guest segment, invite them on specific topics, learn from them about maybe some technical topic or some industry perspective or broader where the market is heading to. So, looking forward to new segments with the guests. Check it out next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See
you,
you,
everyone.
Shanab.
Bye.